Welcome to OTR, a friendly debate, a podcast where lawyers debate topics ranging from music, TV, movies, pop culture, and everything in between, and philosophical deep topics and whatever our hearts desire. Today we'll be discussing this is our third in our nerd trilogy. We'll be discussing Marvel versus Capcom, who's the better company, who makes the better products, and who do we like better? So on the side of Marvel today, we have the amazing, the incredible, the spectacular, the what are some other Marvel things? The invincible, the fantastic.
Thank you.
Lando.
Thanks.
And
how's it going, Mucci?
Good. How are you?
I'm fantastic.
That's like 2 tick marks for the use of the word fantastic this
right.
week. And
for those at home keeping their bingo cards ready.
And on the side of Capcom, he's been practicing his shoryukens, his hadoukens, some spinning bird kicks. I think I even saw him do a spiral arrow at a cannon spike. It was really impressive.
Yeah.
We have Pat.
Yeah, man, I'm feeling great after all that. I mean, you saw me last night in that big open space just going at it.
Practicing your kicks like Mick Jagger, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Just a little bit of up there on stage. But anyways, yeah, I'm doing great. Really...
Wait, did you perform something? There's a stage?
No, I mean, it's just a place. I mean...
Oh. I thought you literally went on stage and started kicking.
I mean, if I had the opportunity, I definitely would. But yeah, I'm just excited today to really dig into some of the history of Capcom and hopefully convince you that, of the foundations it provides to all of the diverse media we enjoy today.
Okay. So
nerdy media. I don't know. There's normal people watching this.
Yeah. The media we enjoy.
Yeah.
So I think I will go into what the format of the episode. First is going to be opening statements from both sides. And then I'm just going to ask a series of questions, and we'll have like a free-form kind of discussion about, different topics and who does better at their respective media. But I just want to quickly address my biases. I have been reading comics since I was a kid. I and totally Marvel comics. Like, I don't really read DC much, but X-Men, Spider-Man, I don't know. And I think in a different format we would have done Marvel versus DC, but I don't think you particularly like the comic book realm. So
not really.
Yeah.
I mean, if I was going to pick a side, though.
DC?
Give me, Batman.
Batman, so.
Yeah, whatever. Is Superman DC?
He is.
Yeah.
This is top 2.
Batman and Superman.
And he really doesn't do much, so Batman's like their main person.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, so Marvel wins that debate, the little mini debate. But
off to a good start.
But in addition to that, I have, seen a lot of the MCU movies, and I've enjoyed a fair number of them, and so I think, I would lean toward Marvel. However, Capcom, I, recently got back into video games after about a decade of not really playing them much, and especially fighting games lately. I've been playing a lot of fighting games, and Capcom is huge in that realm. I've been playing a lot of Street Fighter, and I really love it, and probably play it like almost every day. So
can you just name drop the title of why we're even doing this episode?
Oh, well, Marvel vs. Capcom obviously is a fighting game series. I mean, I guess not obviously if you don't know about it, but a fighting game series where, as it sounds, Marvel characters face off against characters from Street Fighter and Mega Man and Resident Evil and all the other Capcom properties in like a crazy 3-on-3 battle royale sort of stuff.
Full disclosure, I mean, in interest of avoiding any, even appearance of impropriety, I did help Mucci move a mattress out of his house, and we played Marvel vs. Capcom afterwards.
I see what's going on.
But there's no collusion.
I see what's going on. I already... you guys were hanging out last night. I already figured something was going on.
Something's afoot.
You chose not to be there. We invited you.
That was something... The moving of the mattress was something that happened prior to that, so...
Well,
I mean,
you're still going to win.
We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. And I'll go from there, I guess.
Yeah. I'm excited to continue my losing streak.
Well, that all is to say, I think I lean toward Marvel, but I don't see this being a blowout by any means. So, in the interest of that, let's flip a coin to see who is going to start with their openings first. We got a
Lando,
coin,
do you have a
somewhere?
coin?
I have a coin. Here, you want to flip it?
And you want to call it, Lando?
Sure. Heads.
And it's tails.
All right, so that's to me.
It's always tails somehow.
Yeah. Yeah, we should do a Sonic episode sometime. Anyway, so if that's to me, yeah, I'd just like to start off here with a little.
Tails.
Excuse me.
He's a great
Tails.
character.
Tails is a great character.
Yeah.
I think I prefer Knuckles, but go ahead. What do you want to do?
I prefer Shadow the Hedgehog.
Yeah. Okay. Well. Yeah, a little my back foot here, I guess. But yeah, let's just start off with a little blurb about Capcom, and then Lando, you can present your side for Marvel. But basically, Capcom's been around since like 1970. They started off making sort of arcade cabinets, like a lot of Japanese companies started off, then moved into the home entertainment market. So they came in at a time when the NES was released, when people weren't sure if video games were actually gonna stick around, since Atari kind of shit the bed, and they're all their contemporaries. So, he was there, basically from the beginning, and has built several important franchises, I think, within video games, not just limited to rehashing and, reboots of stuff from the original NES, SNES era. And so I think that, given their contributions, especially with Street Fighter, to making video games a competition, to bringing a lot of interest to, the nascent home video game market with the NES and SNES. I think it's, not a stretch to say that if they hadn't made those contributions, if they had instead opted just for arcade things and paid no attention toward making it competitive to bringing things to home consoles, that what we enjoy today in terms of diversity of video games wouldn't exist, if at all, I don't think it's a stretch to say that would we have made it past the PlayStation era without some of the hits that Capcom gave us? Maybe not. Something to consider for the viewers at home.
Okay. This time we could actually say viewers.
Yeah.
If this little experiment works out.
Yeah.
We are recording all of this right now. To the listeners we have, trying to turn this into a little multimedia experience.
Let's not talk about it too much, because in case it all bombs, then we're not going to release that at all. Marvel, the company, has done so much in the past 6 decades in terms of entertainment, the industry including cartoons, TV shows, movies, but they've also had their influence in the video game industry, clothing, merchandise, as well as toys. So every little kid wants to be a superhero. Every little kid wants a superhero birthday party. Every teenager wants a superhero video game. And adults can't wait for the next MCU movie. I know that at least 2 people in this room, definitely 2 people. I know, Pat, you hate the MCU, but 2 people in this room, are excited about either Doctor Strange, or we all went to go see the new Spider-Man movie.
One of us cajoled.
It's obvious the level of influence Marvel has had on pop culture in those 6 decades, but it's completely undeniable that the level Marvel has influenced life as we know it since Iron Man started the MCU. In the video game Marvel vs. Capcom, I'm always going to pick Captain America.
Listening to that, there's 2 words that come to mind. And
you don't get a rebuttal for opening argument.
Well, this is me just starting my part.
Okay.
Anyway, there's 2 words that come to mind when you talk about Marvel's fan base: children and man-children. But Mucci, tell us what your thoughts are.
Even if you don't like the MCU, you can't say that you're not a part of the man-child community. So
I am a fully fledged adult male who has sophisticated tastes.
So I think, and you guys, I think, thankfully avoided this in your openings, but
we're going to get there.
I don't know what you just said. But what I was going to say was that I don't want it to be a 1-to-1 comparison of like who makes better, movies. Like obviously the Street Fighter movie and the Resident Evil movies aren't, we're not comparing those to the MCU
some
movies.
people like them.
Yeah, some people, but like,
Pat might like
Read
them
some of the
better.
reviews.
Yeah,
You couldn't
Pat
have
might
done
like
that.
them better than the MCU movies. He hates them.
but yeah,
No,
maybe.
I'm just a hater.
I don't think it needs to be like a 1-to-1 though. Like, who does better at video games? Like, obviously, Capcom isn't making comic books, at least not to the extent that Marvel does. So I think it want to focus on what each of these companies does best and their contributions to their respective fields. I mean, Marvel kind of has maybe more fields that they're involved in, but we'll get to that.
Can I talk about when Marvel does worst?
Sure.
Okay. I mean, not right now. I'm just saying. I'm just going to snipe your argument.
Never. Okay, so you kind of Pat went through a little bit of the history of Capcom, the company, and everything like that. Lando, could you take me through a little bit of? Did you do some research on Marvel's history? You have something for me?
I did.
Okay.
Hold up, I got some more stuff to go here. I was just giving a little, 30-second snippet up front, a little appetizer.
Okay. Well, I mean, since you have addressed it already, though, like I'll let Lando go first, and then we'll come back to your.
Make sure I'm not silenced here. I'm just
You're only
excited about
It's
it.
a question for both of you guys.
Still a free country. So Marvel
Thank
started.
God for Captain America.
Yeah. Marvel started with Martin Goodman in 1939 as Timely Comics, with his first publication being named Marvel Comics #1. It included the first version of the Human Torch, which is, now we know him as Johnny Storm, and he is a part of the Fantastic Four. But in that comics,
Fantastic.
so fantastic. So, so that was in the early 60s. Another character that they had in one of those first comics was Namor, who has not been a part of the MCU, kind of hinted at so far in...
Submariner.
Right. But he was one of their first ones, and he's, frequently shown in Marvel Comics now. Timely Comics became Atlas Comics in the 50s, then became Marvel in 1961, where they launched their Fantastic Four series and other superhero stories by Stan Lee, Jack Kirby, as well as Steve Ditko, and obviously a lot of other people. And basically, so the 60s is where Marvel that we know today got its start, and all the big named superheroes like the Fantastic Four, X-Men, Spider-Man, all those big names, Thor, started off right there with Stan Lee and those guys. So that became a huge, comic book company, and basically what they did was they made it a comic book company that wasn't just geared for kids. It was, with their storytelling, they transformed the comic book industry into something that the storylines were, real issues that people dealt with. So Spider-Man's always broke. He's a teenager that's going through teenage issues. Iron Man's an alcoholic, a narcissistic alcoholic, and so you kind of see that. you kind of see that in the MCU, sort of, but in the comics they really dive into him actually being an alcoholic and trying to get out of that.
Honestly, I would love if that was in a movie. Like, they need to get some grit on the screen.
Well, if they try too hard, then they end up being like DC, which then nobody likes.
Goes too far that direction.
No, so, and then the X-Men series, at least when they first started off, and throughout their kind of comic run, they dealt with themes of segregation. They dealt with themes of discrimination, and there was comparisons to Nazi Germany and the concentration camps, and all because
Civil rights movement.
Right, civil rights movement.
I mean, aren't the X-Men, like, in that sense, like the most culturally relevant of any MCU property?
It's probably one of the better like allegories in Marvel Comics of like a real world issue, I think.
Spider-Man. He's a teenager trying to deal with life.
He comes webs, yeah. Oops. I'm biased.
So, I don't think that's exactly
I'm
what
going to
he
apologize to
Shoots
any
ropes.
female listeners we have.
Oh my god.
So from then on, from the 70s and 80s, they had TV shows, they had a few movies and video games that kind of didn't really, hit it off the ground. Tobey Maguire was Spider-Man. I know Pat likes Tobey Maguire and Spider-Man.
Yeah, that's the one with the PlayStation 3 font. Those Spider-Mans, all the movies, they use the same one.
Yeah, the Blade trilogy came out around that time. This was kind of, in my mind, it was kind of gearing the general audience for these type of superhero movies that would be appealing to just everyone in pop culture.
Wait, is Blade MCU?
Mm-hmm.
Blade is
it's not MCU, but it's
It's a Marvel property.
He's now going to be in MCU. I think that they kind of spoiler alert. I think they kind of mentioned him already, but he was.
Wait, isn't Blade in What We Do in the Shadows? Also, in the Vampiric Council.
No, they did bring him in. They did bring.
Yeah. So does that mean that What We Do in the Shadows
is Marvel
the same
or the MCU?
Is Marvel?
Wow, this gives me some pause here.
Now you're a fan.
Might have to rewrite this episode.
Yeah. Now you're a fan. Now you could be brought on to everything else. So from there, then Iron Man came out. Jon Favreau directed the first Iron Man. Robert Downey Jr. made that character just pop, and everything blew up from there. So, I mean, it all came from the '60s characters, the story writing that brought these characters to life, and then the movies and the TV shows and everything just made it what it is now.
Okay, so. We'll end with where it is now before I ask about the future, but I want to hear from Pat on Capcom's history and up to where we are now.
Yeah, I'm gonna walk a little bit more slowly through the different eras of video games, I guess.
Okay.
I think decades make sense for you, but it's really a system by system kind of thing for Capcom. So like I said at the beginning, they started off doing arcade cabinets like a lot of Japanese companies did. Sega. Namco, I think, started out as well that way, maybe Bandai. But yeah, their first arcade game that they made all themselves was this game called Vulgus. I'm probably saying that wrong. It's a vertical scrolling shooter that you've probably never played.
Right.
But the follow-on to that was honestly one of my favorite games from the era, 1942.
Oh, yeah.
Do you guys remember that?
It's called 1942?
Yes.
Oh.
Came out in 85 for home system.
1942 that came out in 85.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you play a bomber and you're just shooting your guns as you're scrolling upward and all these enemies come at you and you get power-ups and stuff that changes the kind of
So kind of like Contra?
Except that's side-scrolling. This is vertical.
It's going up?
Yeah. You're flying a plane and you're kind of looking and enemies are coming toward you.
Like a World War II fighter pilot?
Yeah. Oh my god, it's so fucking good. If you haven't played it, please go out and play it. That came out in the NES. And to me, that defines the genre of these vertical scrolling shooters that even today there's indie games coming out with similar kind of things. If you have a Switch, they have the NES, SNES emulator on there. Mm-hmm. And there's, I think 1942 is on there along with a couple other games in that same genre. Mm-hmm. So I just want to point in that before we get to all the Street Fighter stuff of there are other franchises they've made that are kind of genre defining that represent, I think, a new contribution here. Mm-hmm. So throughout the NES period, there's other essential franchises like Mega Man, Ghosts and Goblins, if that's your sort of thing, and then Street Fighter.
Which Ghosts and Goblins, what is that one? Because I know Mega Man. I love Mega Man.
Yeah. Ghosts and Goblins, I think that's a side-scroller, isn't it?
Yeah, you're King Arthur and you're throwing spears.
Oh,
yeah. It's a little dude in armor.
Is you can play him in him as a character in Smash Brothers or something, right? In one of them?
Yeah, some of the stuff is made it in there just because Capcom has so many things on Nintendo systems.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
So you can get
the little guy. He's little.
Dante.
He's a little knight. I guess
yeah, Dante from Devil May Cry. Mm-hmm. Devil May Cry is in there.
Basically, Smash Brothers became Marvel vs. Capcom, adding all these characters from everything. Because Dante's in Marvel vs. Capcom, Arthur is in that one, Mega Man, of course, too. And anyway, go ahead.
So yeah, no, I mean, we can do a Smash Bros. Episode, which I would love.
We could just play Smash Bros.
Yeah. That's for our Patreon subscribers, a little live stream. But yeah, so I mean, Street Fighter, of course, classic fighting game. Not a Double Dragon kind of thing where you're just walking around, but actual 1v1 kind of competition, which I don't think we need to go into, but it started the whole multiplayer arcade competitive sport thing. That now is how many billions of dollars. There's colleges and high schools that have esports programs.
You're not in an arcade just trying to get a high score in Frogger. You're actually fighting against a real person. There was obviously a single player like arcade mode, but like most of it was like 1v1 kind of fighting, right?
I mean, you guys remember like when you were a kid and like came into an arcade and they have like the 2 arcade cabinets that are linked together.
Yeah.
You're like, oh my god. It's not just like crowding up next to somebody playing the same Mortal Kombat thing.
You're talking about the ones that have the dual, like the...
No, these are 2 separate cabinets that have like cables.
I don't think I've ever seen that.
They've got that at
Did
Logan
you not
Arcade.
have a childhood?
At Logan Arcade for the 2 Street Fighter cabinets they have there, they have the Street Fighter 2 Turbo and Street Fighter 3 Third Strike, and it's like you sit on one side and you have your own screen, and the other person sits on the other side and has their own screen.
I've never seen this.
Okay. Well, I know what we're doing for some extracurriculars here.
Let's
Go to Logan Arcade.
Let's
do it.
So,
I grew up in a small town. We didn't have anything.
Man, my neighbors were Amish. Don't give me that shit. But yeah, so like also while we're on the topic of Street Fighter, listen to Street Fighter Moss by Kamasi Washington. Fantastic artist, fantastic song. And again, you were just talking about these reverberations through culture of the Street Fighter thing. So moving on to the PlayStation era, again, I don't want to drag this out, but Resident Evil, I personally don't really like those games. I think the controls are too wonky, and I'm getting chased by zombies, and I can only like slightly move around.
Isn't that the scary part of it?
Yeah.
Like,
I'm a wimp. I never played Silent Hill. Yeah.
Let's knock the biggest thing that they have.
I wouldn't say
Their
Resident
biggest
Evil's the biggest thing. I mean, I got the special edition of like Resident Evil 4 for PlayStation 3 or whatever. My buddy helped me beat that. The same buddy that helps me with like Dark Souls and Elden Ring now. Yeah. Also, Dino Crisis came out. If that's kind of your bag. Onimusha, Devil May Cry, and then one that me and Mucci were talking about before the episode, Monster Hunter. Lando, have you ever played that?
No, but I know that Mucci, when he was a small child, he would also play that. Barney was his little dinosaur that he'd have around, and he'd
just prop him up on the fence post. And,
so if I was actually playing Monster Hunter with Barney, it would be like tearing off parts of Barney's body to make armor for myself.
Yeah. So Monster Hunter is one of them that actually has still has significantly different new releases that has continued to grow.
Yeah.
Which is nice to see. I mean, Street Fighter captured the
is that
sort of fundamental
around?
concept. Monster Hunter?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was on the PlayStation Plus, the 20 games, Monster Hunter Worlds.
They're
on
really
there.
big? They're
What's
like
that?
really, really big monsters?
Yeah, they're giant
really
monsters
big, and
and
you
you
like
like a little
okay.
dude.
Yeah, I saw that on there.
Yeah.
Don't
fight
go with
them
the
in-
bow. Out of the gate, the bow is the worst weapon. This
The idea is you track down monsters and fight them, and you use their parts to make armor or weapons for yourself or improve your weapons, things like that. So it's like a kind of system.
It's like real life kind of thing.
like real.
Yeah, no part of the animal is wasted. Can't go through without mentioning the Phoenix Wright franchise that started on Game Boy, which is just so much fun, especially as 3 attorneys. Nerd out with that shit. And so,
which is also a very common meme on Twitter, the frames from that game, the objection and stuff like that, or people will do the what do they a bot that
there's a
makes
bot that'll take a
Phoenix Wright sort of a back and forth of 2 people talking or something. There we go.
I have
That's
no
pretty
idea
fun.
what you're talking about.
Well, I'll send you some stuff.
Yeah, get on Twitter.
Looking at you
yourself.
blankly,
Don't get on Twitter. It's a bad place.
So yeah, I mean, I just want to, the point here, I guess, is Capcom has this history. They've set up these franchises at very important parts, and the history of video games to make that a viable industry. I mean, there's a reason that the NES was called the Famicom in Japan, the family computer, because they wanted to differentiate themselves from video games. And I think by producing this high quality content, establishing these franchises early on, Capcom helped out there. So obviously, like we said at the beginning, video games are, the home territory, so to speak, of Capcom. I couldn't, I don't want to be a complete punching bag here, but we should talk about the Resident Evil movies.
Okay, go ahead.
So the first one, I pulled up some of the reviews on Rotten Tomatoes, and
he just wants to lose. What?
I mean, I just, I
have to talk
I have
about
to be
this.
real about it. I think I enjoy it.
He's saying that he doesn't even like the games.
I
Their biggest franchise, and then he's gonna knock the movies down.
We're focusing on, Marvel versus Capcom. This isn't Resident Evil versus Capcom.
Hey, you do
versus Marvel.
you.
Or
That's
versus
fine.
Marvel. Well, I guess I'm framing it as Resident Evil versus Capcom.
I guess so.
The first movie, people on Rotten Tomatoes said, an ultra-gory video game to movie disappointment. Zombie movies, of course, allow for a certain degree of poor acting, and that's certainly the case here. One of the positive reviews said, here's the truth of it, film critics, generally speaking, are rather too hard on poor Paul W.S. Anderson. At his best, he is a marvelous purveyor of slickly engineered B-grade entertainment. But, and this is a big but here, zombies were a huge cultural phenomenon for a while in the aughts to mid-teens. And that definitely built upon the pattern established by Resident Evil for part of that. Resident Evil has the professional response team, these agents coming in who know how to use guns and stuff. And that's one side of that, zombie genre. But the other half is the everyman sort of response to a zombie invasion. And they have the Dead Rising series that was really popular and came out, I think, for 360.
That's Capcom?
Pardon?
That's Capcom?
Yeah. Yeah, Dead Rising. So
I had that game for 360. And I did play it until, as we all know, it died out.
Well, I'm just saying that, in that cultural, zeitgeist is the wrong word, but the whole zombie thing that was there for a while, why the fuck is
the late 2000s?
Why is that AMC show still around?
Or
whatever it is.
Walking Dead.
Oh, I used to love it.
But they kind of, they were very present in that. I think formed that whole cultural little niche there. And of course, you got to thank Capcom for providing steady work for Mila Djokovic, Jokovic, or whatever the hell her last name is. If you're a fan of hers. So, yeah, I think that's pretty solid history.
She's got to be doing something else.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, she has other gigs, but it's nice. You need to spare $2 million. Just, all right, we'll just roll up another Resident Evil movie and get going.
Because she got paid $2 million the first time. So the next one, they have to...
But they have to pay her.
That's what they call her quote. Even if she does a bad job, she still gets the $2 million.
They have to pay her the $2 million.
Okay.
Another, I think you should leave reference.
Yeah.
Actually, not even reference. That's a direct quote.
Yeah. Check it off on your bingo sheets at home.
So, I think both of you took us to where the companies are today. What does the future of the company look like? And would you say your respective company is kind of at a peak, or is it plateauing, or is it heading for a downturn? Lando, what do you think?
Can I answer for him? Because
please.
I'd be interested to think.
They're definitely on the downward spiral, out of control. Spiral. I won't actually.
Is the pilot asleep at the wheels here?
I don't know, because
the sticks.
Is that based on anything, or just wanted to shit talk?
Yeah, I was just shit talking.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
It's just based on I don't know, when was the last time I played a Capcom game? Not
you don't even know. You didn't even know
I don't know.
Rising was.
No, that was a long time ago.
You played Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite.
I did. I played it twice,
Yeah.
and then I was like, "Oh no!"
Yeah,
you know what?
It's not that great.
It's not that
that
great.
That one's not that great.
But you know why I got it? Because Marvel's on there. Yeah.
Let's talk about that. By the way.
So in terms of Marvel's future, obviously they have the MCU that's just going. They've got their next 10 years, more than 10 years planned out, I'm sure. They've got so many movies that are coming out. That's going to lead to TV shows. That's going to lead to, live action TV shows. That's going to lead to cartoons. That's going to lead to merchandise. That's going to lead to so much.
Do you see that falling apart anytime soon, though? Do you think they'll still churn out, movies that are the most
that's the word.
That's
the word.
But the movies that they do put out are among the most successful of all time. I think Endgame is the most successful movie of all time. Are they going to keep?
So was Avatar, but that's not saying anything.
Sure.
Yeah, but Avatar hasn't done anything since Avatar. So their sequel was
There's a new one coming out?
Well, yeah, there's a new one coming out.
They've got the next 4 planned out, but when did it come out? 2003?
No, it does on 11 or 12 or something like that. But
what?
We're not talking about Avatar.
Okay. Let's get into Avatar.
Back to it.
Is this whole superhero movies being the most popular movies of all time? Is that bubble gonna burst? Is that gonna get to be exhausting for people, and people are just gonna be okay, what the hell are we doing in here anymore?
I think it might.
The housing bubble's going to crash. Everybody's on the streets. No one's
they're not
going
to be able to afford it.
Yeah.
No, so Endgame was obviously a huge endeavor where they had all these movies planned out for this big payoff with Endgame. And it was all planned out and everything led up to it. It was great. I loved the whole build up to it. You know, you watch everyone and you see Thanos.
But where are they going now?
Well, that's what I was getting at. That's what I was getting at because the next couple movies.
It's Endgame. It should be the end. It's the game of the end.
Apart from Spider-Man, I haven't really been too big of a fan of the stuff that they have done now. Like, I was really hoping Moon Knight would be really good because I like Oscar Isaac. I think he's a fantastic
Wait, which
guy.
one's that?
Moon Knight. It's a TV show on Disney+.
He's a knight for the moon.
Yeah, he's an Egyptian god or something or other.
Is it like a werewolf kind of thing? He turns into a knight
No.
under a full moon.
No. I mean, that would make sense. But no. He's obviously based off the comic books and
Right.
Obviously.
it's Marvel. I remember looking or when I was in like a comic book store as a kid, seeing Moon Knight comic books and thinking that guy looks cool.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would just
never knew anything about him. I feel like
I never knew anything about him because I never bought the comic books. I just always thought he looked like a cool character.
And the MCU has, I think, covered a lot of comics that, or a lot of comic book characters, I should say, that a lot of people didn't really know much about. Like Iron Man was kind of not all that popular before they made a movie out of him, stuff like that. And now those characters are so popular. Well, that's DC.
Oh, it is?
Yeah. The Marvel counterpart is, of course, Submariner, as Lando mentioned.
Yeah.
But, so you sound a little bit less hopeful on where the MCU is heading.
Well, what I was saying is it's kind of early on because obviously it took around a decade for them to build up to Endgame. Right now, Endgame just kind of finished off. We don't really know where they're... And it kind of seems like from the Loki series, and I haven't seen Doctor Strange yet, but it seems like...
I think even I've seen Doctor Strange.
The new one, the one that just came out.
Oh, no.
It was like Doctor Strange.
Yeah.
I'd be very surprised if you went to the theater and saw that without us.
Man, I got really baked and wandered into a Regal.
It seems
Again, I'm a fully formed adult. I'm not a man child.
Yeah, that's not childish at all. Just wandering into a place.
So,
what I'm saying is, I don't think we know fully what the payoff is going to be. I think they're connecting it to something, and I think eventually we'll see. And it seems like Kang the Conqueror or whatever is going to be the next big bad, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And everything's going to probably tie together. They know what they're doing. They've been doing it so well for so long. So I'm sure it'll start kind of building momentum.
So I just want to have a quick test of how much you believe in that position. Do you know offhand how much Disney stock you own? Their parent company, of course, of Marvel.
Don't get me started on Disney. We've already talked about how I don't like Disney.
Have we?
Yeah.
In his anti-Star Wars sequels.
Yeah, I just wiped out the first part of that show.
Clearly, I wasn't even trying.
182 episode.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I don't know. You gotta put your money where your mouth is. If you think this 10-year plan for Marvel is a good idea,
well, do you
want to stand to profit off of it?
You want me to invest in Disney?
Yeah, you heard it here first, folks. It's a bull market for Disney.
Do you have, Pat, a analysis of the direction that Capcom is going? And...
He has no idea.
Well,
they don't have an idea.
I feel like we've skipped over a couple of points that I would want to interject, but didn't want to interrupt you for anything serious. I give you short tangents, not long ones. So let's start with, I guess, the present.
Okay.
You talked about most recently you had played Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite.
Terrible game,
right?
Yeah. So there's something that I think is different about that game that's worth calling out. So, like you said in the beginning, the usual format of Marvel vs. Capcom is 3-on-3 tag team sort of battles where you have these interesting mechanics where different characters will come together for combo moves and power-ups and stuff like that. And, it has, I think the character selection screen is like a book open.
Yeah.
That has 40 characters or something. And so when Marvel and Capcom came together to build Infinite,
is that what the last one's called? Infinite?
Yeah.
Okay. There was Origins, which sort of came up before that, which was like a port of arcade ones, but you guys didn't play that.
Right, that's like the original like first 2 Marvel vs. Capcom games or something like that?
Yeah, but the actual like arcade cabinet sort of style ones, they like emulated the board for it. But anyway, so with Infinite, what they want to do is they saw this like big movie, box office success of Infinite and wanted to have a tie-in. Mm-hmm. And so they knew that the core demographic of people that are into like Street Fighter fighting games is maybe a little bit smaller than like the children and man-children that are big fans of the MCU.
I also mentioned teenagers. I don't know why you're going from children to like full-fledged adults.
Children, adolescent children, teenage children, adult children.
That encompassed all of humanity. Like, you're going to be in one of those stages.
You could just be an adolescent.
Yes.
In any case, though, what they did is they said, okay, we want to have this game be more accessible to the people that they think are going to come over from MCU fans into playing Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite. And so they took away the 3-on-3 battles. Mm-hmm. They took away the combo moves. And partially, I'm not going to get started on this fucking thing, but partially because of this fucking copyright battle between like Disney, Marvel, and Capcom, the character selection was like way pared down compared to previous games,
which sucks because even Infinite, you would think that Infinite, there's going to be a lot of characters
from the movie.
Yeah,
there's no X-Men characters.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. But
there historically were X-Men characters in the Marvel vs. Capcom.
That was like one of the first Marvel.
Yeah.
It was
it's X-Men Children of the Atom. Which was like an X-Men fighting game. And then it's like X-Men versus Street Fighter. Marvel Superheroes was another fighting game.
Yeah.
Marvel Superheroes versus Street Fighter, I think, was the next one. And then Marvel vs. Capcom, which just like combines all that together.
Yeah, the whole, I think, point of Marvel vs. Capcom and the way it was different is that it's not just a reskinned Street Fighter. Mm-hmm. And so with Infinite, they just made a reskinned Street Fighter with some MCU characters as a video game tie-in. And so, that one sucks. But it sucks because they had to water it down because they knew the kind of people that were coming over from the Marvel fandom.
What do you mean, kind of people?
These children, these people that, aren't expecting to have an engaging video game that 3 people on your team is too complex. So you're right. Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite is not the flagship shining star of the series.
Yeah, Resident
But because they wanted to court this, Marvel Infinite, whatever the hell it's called, Avengers Infinite movie base. So, you see what happens when you pander to this MCU common denominator kind of media, is it takes away from any actual soul of a game. And that's all I have to say about that.
Is there another tangent question you're getting to?
Oh, yeah, we're trying to talk about the present and the future.
Yes.
Right. We have Monster Hunter World Art right now. There's another one coming out soon.
There's a newer one for the Switch, too.
Yeah, and so these are like flagship AAA games. Play World, preferably played on a PC. I know I'm the only one nerdy enough to actually have a PC, but you can play it in 4K with the graphics turned all the way up, and it is breathtaking. You're wandering through these forests, hunting these monsters, and the texture and the lighting and the way the foliage and everything comes together is just, it's incredible if you've never played a game like that.
I'm sure it looks great on the PS5.
Yeah. We were talking about it earlier. This
isn't the PC versus PS5 debate, though.
Yeah, we'll get there eventually.
Yeah.
But yeah, so basically, I think that right now their flagship is Monster Hunter, which is really highly reviewed. It's clear they're putting a lot of development time and money into that, which is great to see. So that's a newer franchise they're trying to grow. Of course, there's a new Resident Evil coming out later this year, and even though personally that might be a little too spoopy for me, those games are generally, better reviewed than their movie counterparts.
I'm sorry, spoofy?
Spoopy.
Game or movie?
Game, thankfully.
Okay.
I can't sit here with a straight face and try and defend the Resident Evil movies.
Or any Capcom movie, maybe.
Street Fighter, come on. I mean, some of the animated stuff is okay if you're into that kind of thing, but yeah. So yeah, I think the future does kind of lie with Resident Evil and Monster Hunter in terms of like new development. Of course, like having such a long history on NES, SNES, PlayStation 1 and 2, like there are going to be sort of nostalgic things that come out. Like there's going to be another Mega Man remastered, I'm sure, within the next 4 or 5 years.
I would love like a really good, Mega Man open world kind of thing.
Yeah,
that would be awesome.
Yeah, I mean that's if you're gonna have a fair critique, it's just been kind of like working through a typical platformer, and that's one of the things though is they're so genre defining the original games that there's at least some merit to trying to update them. Like, yeah, they're not going to radically redesign Street Fighter because Street Fighter is Street Fighter.
Street Fighter 6 is coming out. I think a full trailer is coming in June, but I don't know if it's coming this year or next year. But
is it the same thing as every other one?
I don't know. We don't know yet.
I don't like that tone, Mister.
Because I wouldn't mind a Street Fighter open world game either.
Yeah,
not every game needs to be open world. But
if you're doing the same thing,
open world game, you just
over and over. If you're doing the same thing over and over again,
is that your critique of Grand Theft Auto as well?
No. Grand Theft Auto could do a one-on-one Street Fighter game too.
Oh my god! Give me fucking CJ.
Try something different. I don't know.
Cousin.
We talked a little bit.
That's a special move. Just his Hadouken is a bowling ball thrown. Okay. Marvel versus Capcom versus Rockstar.
Do you have another question for us, Mucci?
Yeah.
All right.
We can just keep riffing.
We talked briefly about, of course, it's hard to avoid it, but like Infinity War, Endgame, that kind of stuff. Like, and at the time that it was coming out, its big like promo was the most ambitious crossover event in history, and it was like a kind of a common sort of meme going around of like people sharing images and like, well, what about this? What about that? And I think there's a case that could be made for Marvel vs. Capcom being one of the most ambitious crossover events. So like, which do you think is more ambitious? I guess that would be your side, but like, what has been more influential in their respective like industries and society at large? And Infinity War and Endgame were pretty recent, but if there's any influence you can trace to other films or the movie industry or anything like that.
Are you talking about just general basic question, which company is more influential? Not company,
but like the because it is a unique kind of movie. Infinity War and Endgame, it's like a movie that brings together like 15 other movies before it, brings it all together. Like, what is that kind of movie's influence on like Hollywood and like TV and movies that come out since then? And then for Capcom, what is Marvel vs. Capcom's influence on like video games and the fighting game community and everything like that? And
sure. Lando, do you want to start?
Yeah, sure. I mean, so Endgame. So I like Infinity War better than Endgame. I thought it was
I did too.
It was a better movie. Endgame was kind of slow, and for good reason. They kind of had to start off at a certain point and then build up. But everything after that, in terms of what's in the MCU right now, is still sort of dealing with the aftermath of Endgame and all the events, and the sequel to Spider-Man was still dealing with it. I think No Way Home was still dealing with it too. Pretty much everything was still dealing with the aftermath of Endgame. And so, I mean, it still felt... It's starting to get away from it now, but in terms of influence within that property, within Marvel, it was felt, for a while.
But do you see its influence on, like, other superhero movies or other, TV shows?
What
like,
other...
You're kind of talking internally, like, to the plot.
Yeah. I mean more of its influence, like, at large in the industries or like in society.
Oh, within the industry, I mean, there were so many big names that were a part of Infinity War and Endgame. So and they were huge movies, right? So they brought in so much. Because this is always my argument, but in terms of the numbers, in terms of sales and all that stuff, they were huge movies.
Mm-hmm. Lando, the perennial maximalist over
here.
More is more.
No, I was just saying.
PlayStation sold more. They sold more Marvel movies.
I mean, they did. I was saying that I don't want to get into that. I mean, but that's how you answer the question, right? So the influence in that industry is that it was felt in terms of these big names that were attached to these movies. Like, all these big name actors are attached to Marvel in some way, to the MCU, and they keep getting more people.
But are like other properties going to start doing like what Infinity War did and have like, is there going to be like
you mean other movie companies or whatever?
Well, okay, so like maybe, DC, I guess, started to kind of try to do what Marvel did, right, with
too early
Justice League, a little too early. But like, are they going to do that, or is like, I don't know, are there going to be like a number more of have they made an Alien movie? I don't know why I thought of Alien, but
they already have though.
Alien versus Predator, man.
That's true. That's true. I guess that happened before Marvel.
So they've already.
That was ambitious. It's like whoever wins, we all lose. That's a pretty ambitious crossover event.
What is this, a crossover episode? So no, you've seen it in different places. So you see it with DC. They try to do it way too early. There was no character development whatsoever. They just try to put all these people together in a rushed kind of Avengers sort of way. Didn't work out. But you also saw it they started it, and I think they kind of canceled it, or
the dark
you know what I'm talking about, right?
Thing with like the different monsters and stuff.
The different monsters. So Jay-Z thought of it because he can name a lot of different monsters.
Sasquatch, Godzilla, King Kong, Loch Ness.
Sounds like the Pokemon song.
Goblin, ghoul, a zombie with no conscience.
What was it? What was the joke, Mucci? We want you to be on this song. Oh yeah, I got all the monsters.
Kanye's like, I have this song called Monster. I really want you to write a verse for it. Oh, I know all sorts of monsters. Wait. That's not what I'm talking about. Godzilla, King Kong, Loch Ness.
So the dark universe or whatever. Tom Cruise was in it, attached to it. Was it Russell Crowe, maybe?
What?
Right? You know what I'm talking about, right?
I know. I didn't really follow it, but I remember they were trying to do like the dark universe thing and like
all the original like 1940s monsters.
So the first other company to try to do what Marvel did ends up crashing and burning. So is that like something that is a good influence on the industry, or like Marvel is the only one that can do it right? Do you think other companies are going to do that or have done that?
It's an influence. I mean, just because another company can't do it as well as Marvel doesn't mean anything. I mean, Marvel's doing it good, right? They're doing it better than everybody else.
But so like going to Marvel vs. Capcom and its influence on the video game industry. I mean, obviously we talked about maybe off mic, but like Smash Brothers is kind of like that, like bringing in all these characters from all these different genres.
Yeah.
Would we have Smash Brothers?
One is?
What's that?
Whatever that PlayStation crossover thing was for all their IP.
Oh, I don't remember that one. But would we have that kind of stuff like if it weren't for Marvel vs. Capcom?
Yeah, so I think there's, we're talking about the progeny or effects of, Marvel vs. Capcom, these crossover fighting games. There's some easy things to point to. Street Fighter itself, in terms of like having the genre of a fighting game that would lead to an eventual crossover, like Tekken and stuff, that's come from that. Soul Calibur, which I think each have their own crossover fighting games. With Marvel vs. Capcom,
would Soul Calibur have like Darth Vader in it if it weren't for Marvel vs. Capcom doing what it did?
Making it a,
is Darth Vader actually in it?
He's in like one of the Soul Calibur games, yeah, like I think like 3 or 4.
Yeah, so in as much as it kind of opened up that idea, the space for those, specifically the Marvel vs. Capcom sort of series. I mean, we all love Smash Brothers. I was just talking to Mucci during the break here of PlayStation's All Stars Battle Royale, which is pretty fun. And the interesting thing there is that Dante from Devil May Cry, a Capcom property, is in Marvel vs. Capcom, is in Smash Brothers, and is in the PlayStation crossover fighting game. And also Snake, Solid Snake from Metal Gear Solid, is in Smash Brothers, so you can fight those two characters in multiple games.
Yeah, but Snake is Konami.
Yeah, but I'm just saying that like in terms of like this. Yeah, we need to have a Toonami episode.
Konami.
Yeah.
Konami.
All to say that like these are like a prevalent, serious, competitive, and beloved, type of games. I'm not going to go as far as say like the battle royale genre in general. Like, I'm not going to claim any relation to Fortnite or Tetris 99 is technically a battle royale. Those aren't related. There's no clear link there. But like these like crossover fighting games are remain popular, and that was a genre that was created by Marvel vs. Capcom, or more realistically X-Men vs. Capcom back in like the mid-90s.
Those were good games.
X-Men vs. Street Fighter,
yeah, that's what it was.
X-Men versus Street Fighter it was?
It's X-Men Children of the Atom, which was
said this.
An X-Men fighting game, just X-Men, right? And then Marvel Superheroes, which was like other Marvel superheroes fighting each other. There's also X-Men versus Street Fighter, and then Marvel Superheroes versus Street Fighter, and then they start making
broaden it out a little bit.
Broadly Marvel vs. Capcom.
Where does the Simpsons arcade game fall? Was that Capcom?
It was a later edition.
Simpsons vs. Capcom.
That's what they should do.
One can only hope to. Talk about things that have, staying power. Simpsons have been around, just as long as Capcom.
Fair enough, yeah.
But, some of the greatest hits are probably from the early 90s.
Yeah.
I think that, like, the effects of Marvel vs. Capcom on, like, the genre are clear. And, just to recall what I said in the beginning is that absent, like, these contributions to combining properties, to making an interesting way to combine different properties, we'd be poor for it today. But one of the things you touched on earlier that, if I'm not dragging on, I'd like to bring up is the idea of this ambitious crossover event. I think
it wasn't just ambitious. Like, it paid
off.
The
most ambitious.
Like, Endgame wasn't just like a hopeful dream that, I'm hopefully it'll pay off. Like, it really did pay off for them. So it wasn't just ambitious.
That's what they called it.
I mean, up until the point where they profited off of their success.
So, I want to talk a bit about, like, what's the novelty of the crossover in Marvel vs. Capcom? Because I think the title doesn't really give it away of, like, you just take Marvel and you take Capcom and, just combine them together.
Just like that.
But there is some novelty to having these different characters face off against each other from even different parts of the Marvel IP and different parts of the Capcom IP. You have like non-fighting characters, like Phoenix Wright that can fight different characters from Marvel. And so, it really leans into what's unique about each character and lets you build your own team if you want to have a theme. There's a reason, I guess is what I'm saying, that these characters are included, why they're allowed to be fight, and that they're in the game and given, this specific unique voice. And in my cynic's mind, the most ambitious crossover event of all time is just literally collecting every single piece of IP that Marvel has and sticking it in the same movie so that their copyright claim to those, different IPs is shored up for a couple decades. And so, I guess at the end, I could think of a more ambitious crossover. Doesn't seem ambitious at all. You're not wrong at all, Orlando, about the financial success of, Avengers, Endgame, Infinity War, whatever. But the strategy seems not a strategy from, we want to create this beautiful artistic arc and create all these new stories, and more or less, let's make a shit ton of money. And so I think that the effect is, it's a proven business model to have Marvel MCU stuff. But does it contribute to the art? Are these movies that decades from now they're going to put, Avengers Infinity War or Doctor Strangelove #3 on the top 100 movies of all time?
Well, maybe Doctor Strangelove, but that's not a Marvel movie.
Doctor Strang, is like the 16th Spider-Man movie really contributing anything to a serious work of art? And, this is where, at the end, the moderator has the choice between more is more. These are popular, widely regarded, multi-billion-dollar franchises versus, is this actually good art?
But it's not just more is more, though. These, like, you're saying
that
you're saying that it's not art.
I'm not saying that it's not art. I'm saying it hasn't advanced any art.
Well, what it's done is it's done something that hasn't been done before. The MCU built at least 10 years worth up until Endgame. No one else has done that. There hasn't been a movie franchise or a movie. There hasn't been a company.
Listen to the words you're using. Movie franchise, 10 years.
But you know
company. Are those words that an artist is likely to use? You know, hey, when it was late 50s and they're making the timely comics or whatever.
You and Scorsese, because Scorsese hates on the MCU movies like no other. But
what does he got? A hater, but I'm just saying that like.
He's got all these gangster movies. They're all the same.
Scorsese is amazing. We're not going to get into that.
We should really, read William S. Buckley's review of The Godfather. If
he wants to talk about they're all the same or whatever, his movies are all the same.
No,
you can see one.
We're not going.
I love you taking the piss, Orlando. I'm cutting I love this. I'm going to high five you here in the studio.
So what I'm saying is though, like no other.
You got to work on your poker face.
No one else has done that.
Yeah,
you know, they've built up each movie. Basically, relied on so many people watching the first couple movies, then watching this middle section of movies. Then they built it in phases, right? So like.
Yeah, kind of like the Star Wars movies.
Yeah, and
everyone hates the prequels. I think we've.
I think they gained a little bit
worse.
I think they gained a little bit more respect after the sequels came out, but that's neither here nor there. I mean,
yeah, they built something huge. They put together 10 years of Star Wars content that you need to have some familiarity with the series with. Which, you know, whether or not Disney or George Lucas got a good deal on that was whatever. But, like, it's clear that, like, despite being successful, the Star Wars franchise that's lasted a number of years hasn't really contributed anything to the art after the original 3. I mean, okay, speaking of crossovers, have you seen the commentary from George Lucas on the first prequel? Have you seen this? Have you heard about this? Okay. He's talking about the scene when there's all the big battle scene where there's all the robot drone kind of things and the Gungans are coming up.
He's talking about Jar Jar Binks.
And Jar Jar Binks is there. And so George Lucas is like, there's going to be so much stuff on the screen at the one time. There's just so much stuff. The Gungans are there. There's going to be so many Gungans. And he's just like going on and on about just his vision is like, it's so ambitious. You got this crossover between the Empire and the Gungans. And there's going to be so much stuff on screen. And I can't help but in my cynical mind think that there is not a similar pattern of thought between let's get so many people in one movie. Ambitious, certainly. Great.
I mean, I guess that wasn't the question, though.
Okay, so I've heard from both of you extensively about your positions. Could we wrap it up and go into your closing arguments?
Certainly.
Yeah, sure.
Who wants to go first?
Since I opened it, should I close it first as well, or do you want to flip it?
Go ahead.
All right. Yeah. Well, to keep things simple here, you've heard today that the fundamental contributions of Capcom as a company opened all these genres, made video games even possible to have them on the scale we have them today. And we're talking about their crossover fighting games, Marvel vs. Capcom in particular, that was also genre-defining in a way that's been repeated to some success by, Smash Brothers, to a great amount of success, I guess. Mm-hmm. There's a reason for the combination more than just combining IPs. There's novelty there in terms of exploring the characters. So we have fundamental contributions. We have development through the 90s of a very specific game for the Marvel vs. Capcom series. We have reverberations throughout culture from that. And so I think in terms of having an honest and authentic approach to it, Capcom wins there. Whereas, to put it into two words, again, on this sort of simple level that Marvel fans might understand, I see the MCU as just a cash grab. Cash grab. So, thanks for listening, Mucci.
And Lando?
So, if you think about Capcom versus Marvel...
Well, that's asking a lot.
Just think about the title itself. Capcom made that game, right? Mm-hmm. So they brought in Marvel to help generate some revenue. They brought in Marvel to help them out. Whereas Marvel, it was just another, thing they've got going on. Taking aside, like, the MCU. So that's all the movie universe.
I'm going to interject. I don't know how successful Marvel was as a company in the 90s.
Okay, sure, but...
They were like bottom of the barrel when Iron Man came out, before Iron Man came out.
Like, now they're so lucky.
Now they're
Capcom
successful.
Came along.
Hear me out.
Okay, go ahead.
The MCU, sure, that's a huge thing. No, you can't even deny that. They're huge.
They're
And
certainly large.
like, they've influenced all of pop culture for the last at least 10 years, a full decade. They've just been dominating movies completely.
I don't think Funko Pops count as culture.
Bottom line, Marvel knows what they're doing. Capcom, they have to rely on Marvel to help them out. You heard the rest.
These hot takes, I'm sweating.
So, all right, I'm gonna make my ruling.
Just finish it up here.
What?
I said, let's just finish it up here.
That's what we're doing. So, Marvel, it's hard for me not to give credit for how much Marvel has been important in my upbringing and my life, like comic books and the Spider-Man and X-Men comic books, the animated series, video games when I was a kid.
Don't you do it. Don't you do it. Just because you played a Capcom game before you came here.
A Capcom.
Don't you do it.
But it was also a Marvel game.
So, and
I'll let you borrow the Avengers game.
isn't that supposed to be not that great?
It's okay. Continue.
As
sorry.
I was saying.
As you were saying.
Yeah, I mean, so on the one hand, I'm talking about these stories that are, in a lot of ways, a big influence on my life, my upbringing, and everything. And on the other hand, I'm talking video games that were, a big influence on my life. And like Resident Evil, I was fascinated with as a kid, even before I was allowed to play it. I always loved.
It was too spooky.
It's too spooky. I always loved fighting games, and platformers and everything like that. So I think I'm going to come out. Where am I now, and what am I most looking forward to, and what would I rather do now? Would I rather put on an MCU movie I haven't seen, or play a Capcom game I haven't played? I might rather play a Capcom game. What am I more excited for what's coming out? The next MCU movie, or Street Fighter 6? I'm kind of more excited for Street Fighter 6. So I think...
Because you watched the trailer 2 seconds ago.
I've seen it before. And I've been playing a lot of Street Fighter 5.
You watched it multiple times.
Yeah, we watched the new Mrs. Marvel trailer.
And that, actually, that looks good. I think where I'm at now, it's close, but I think I'm going to give it to Pat this time and make mine Capcom. So, Pat, I'll give Pat a full point this time, but...
That's not going to hurt in editing.
But... because of how much I like Marvel, and I think Orlando did a great job in bringing in the history of Marvel as a company, I'm going to give a half point this week to Lando.
That's been the biggest partial credit I think we've seen on the show.
You know what? I'll take it.
Yeah.
I'll take it.
And you will take it, you will like it.
You're not immediately lodging the appeal?
No, that one, so Aliens versus Ghosts, that one was stolen from me. Okay? And it's still out for appeal. It'll come back.
Yeah.
Don't you worry.
So yeah, I think because of that and because of how close these two are in my esteem, I think this was a good discussion. I think Orlando deserves half a point for that. So I think
if this debate had happened maybe right after we saw Spider-Man, it would have gone a different way.
Well,
he just spent the entire weekend playing Capcom games. I was calling him and texting him and all this stuff. I tried FaceTime him at one point. He was lying on the couch just fucking playing Capcom games all week.
So
you guys have told me that...
No, to your point. Sorry, but to your point, if we had done this podcast 2 years ago, before I was back into the world of video games, I think it would have been an easy win for Marvel.
Damn, so it was my fault. Because I got you into the PS5.
You got me into it, whatever that means.
I mean, I'm playing it on my PS3.
Go ahead, Pat. What were you saying?
I was saying, you guys have always said, like, oh, this is going to be the movie that catches you in the MCU. And at this point, I've seen, like, Thor, Loki.
Oh, that's because you're watching the shitty ones. Thor? I mean, which Thor did you watch?
Doctor Strange.
Nah.
I don't know. So at this point, I've watched, I don't know, maybe 10% of them. I don't know how many MCU movies there are.
The wrong ones.
40? Hey, that's what Derek, future friend of the pod, future guest on the pod, told me that's, what I should be watching. And
you watched Thor 2?
Maybe.
I haven't even seen that
one. It just hasn't caught me in, but, like, you can literally play any Street Fighter game from, like, 1985 until now, and we'll have a good time. It's not like you need to, like, okay, to appreciate Street Fighter 6, you need to
have played all the other ones.
Street Fighter 2 through 5. Like, no!
I need to know the story.
But that was my whole point. There's no story there. Okay. I also don't think
You're the story.
I don't think I've played... I don't think I've played
There's a story, it just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
I don't think I've played a full Resident Evil game through, like, to completion.
No, there's a story in that.
Listen out.
I just got bored every single time. I tried playing it on the Xbox 360. I tried playing on the Nintendo Wii. And I haven't tried it on the PS5, but...
You just need to play with all the lights out, draw the curtains, man. Get really into the spookiness.
Get spookified.
Get a little baked.
Spookified. Okay, so...
Yeah. Pat, you get the win today?
Pat, you get the win.
I'll take it. I'm not going to be a sore winner.
Yeah. All right, so like and subscribe to us on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to your podcasts, and leave a review, leave us 5 stars, and let us know how you liked it. If you have any suggestions for upcoming episodes, you can leave that in a review or in an email to us or on our social media or on Instagram or on
which is
Twitter.
all on the same link, by the way.
The Linktree link. So if you are listening to this, you probably know where we are, but leave us a review and it'll help us out. And this has been OTR, a friendly debate.